Forest National Park is a 221,440-acre national park located in the Navajo and Apache counties in northeastern Arizona. There is evidence of human inhabitants of the park dating back 12,000 years, and there are artifacts found within over 1,200 archaeological sites in the park. Spear points, likely used by the Paleo Indians, are some of the oldest artifacts found within the park, and those spear points, as you might guess, are made out of petrified wood. Between 8,000 and 1,000 BC, nomadic people hunted and gathered in the area seasonally, and by 1000 BC, the Basket Maker II ancestral Pueblans had begun farming corn in the region. Between 200 and 500 BC, the population increased as people began building houses and settling there permanently. For the most part, people lived in subterranean pit structures, and between 900 and 1050 AD, they began building above-ground buildings made of stones and jacal. Just like the spear points, those buildings were sometimes made of petrified wood. One of these petrified wood buildings was reconstructed in the winter of 1933 and 1934 and is known today as Agate House and can be accessed by a 2-mile trail. The structure has 8 rooms and was likely inhabited between 1050 and 13,000 AD. From 12,050 to 1450 AD, the ancestral Pueblans began living in larger pueblos like the 200-room Puerco Pueblo, which probably housed about 200 people. Eventually, though, people began moving out of the region and to larger towns in northern Arizona and northern New Mexico. By 1380, the residents of the Puerco Pueblo had all moved out. There was some Spanish exploration between the 16th and 18th centuries, and these explorers called the area the Painted Desert. I'm not even going to attempt to say that in Spanish because I know that I'm going to butcher it, and that's just embarrassing. In 1853, after the United States gained control of the Southwest, Lieutenant Emil Whipple led an expedition to the region and called one of the washes in the northern part of the park Lithidendron Creek, which means Stone Tree Creek but sounds a lot prettier. Throughout the 19th century, many settlers came through the region, and some stayed to graze cattle. Oddly enough, camels were used for a few years as transportation, and by 1895, the residents of the area had begun to advocate for the establishment of a national park to protect it. In 1906, Petrified Forest National Monument became the second United States national monument, and in 1962, the national park was established. Even though the park is a desert now, during the late Triassic, it was by the equator and had a humid subtropical climate. There were also streams flowing through the area in this time period, which brought fallen trees and dead animals along with sediment that buried the remains of these organisms, allowing them to fossilize. These fossils became part of the Chinle Formation, part of which is in the park today. Some of the fossilized organisms in the park have even retained their internal structure down to a cellular level, which is honestly just really cool. So if you like paleontology, this is definitely the park for you. There are at least 9 distinct species of petrified trees in the park, but the most common is Arachilazon arizonicum. I really do not think that I pronounced that right, which is a now extinct conifer that grew up to 200 feet tall. The fossilized trees are sometimes called rainbow wood because they have a variety of colors, but these colors don't actually come from the wood. They come from minerals. The purple and red are from hematite, and the yellow color comes from limonite. The petrified wood is also the state fossil of Arizona. Aside from trees, leaves, seeds, cones, pollen grains, spores, insects, and fish have been preserved in compression fossils. There are also a huge array of fossilized late Triassic vertebrates, which, if you're like me and only have a very preliminary knowledge of paleontology, basically means dinosaurs. What is considered the oldest fossilized crayfish is also found within the park, though it's actually not technically a crayfish, but it's part of an extinct branch of crustaceans. Today, animals in the park include coyotes, jackrabbits, Gunnarsson's prairie dogs, golden eagles, bats, collared lizards, cicadas, gopher snakes, rattlesnakes, tiger salamanders, Great Plains and spadefoot toads, centipedes, scorpions, white-tailed antelope, squirrels, bull snakes, and also pronghorns, which have the distinction of being the second fastest land animals on Earth. The plateau striped whiptails are a species of lizard in the park, and their entire population is made up of females, which is really interesting. Even though the area was once a forest, now the dominant plants are grasses, and there are over 100 species, including blue flax, sideoats grama, Mariposa lily, evening primrose, and bearded sprangletop. There are also shrubs like sagebrush, saltbrush, and rabbitbrush. The climate in the park is classified as a cold, semi-arid climate with an average extreme minimum temperature of 3.1 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 16.1 degrees Celsius, though temperatures as high as 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius and as low as negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 22 degrees Celsius have been recorded. It gets an average of just under 10 inches of rain per year, and winds can reach up to 60 miles per hour or 97 kilometers per hour in the winter. The elevation of the park averages at 5,400 feet or 1,600 meters, so there's sometimes light snow in the winter, but it rarely stays on the ground for long. Even though the badlands and the generally desolate landscape of the park don't look too appealing to me, I would still love to go to this park. Of course, I love archaeology, and I'm also particularly interested in the ancestral Pueblan culture, so, I just need to see the agate house in Puerto Pueblo. I'm sure the fossils are cool, too. Grand Canyon National Park is located in northwestern Arizona near the Coconino and Mojave counties. It covers 1,217,262 acres of land. The first people confirmed to inhabit the area around the Grand Canyon were the ancestral Pueblans. 11 tribes of southwestern natives are connected to the Grand Canyon region. The Havasupai tribe, the Hopi tribe, the Hualapai tribe, the Kibbe Band of Paiute Indians, the Las Vegas Band of Paiute Indians, the Moapa Band of Paiute Indians, the Navajo Nation, the Paiute Indian tribe of Utah, the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe, the Pueblo of Zuni, and the Yavapai Apache Nation. In the fall of 1540, a group of Spanish soldiers who were under orders from Francisco Vázquez de Coronado to look for the 7 cities of gold were led by Hopi guides to the canyon. The next Europeans to explore the area were 2 Spanish priests and another group of soldiers in 1776 who were looking for a route from Santa Fe to California. They were able to find a crossing across the canyon, which became known as the Crossing of Fathers. Today, this crossing is under Lake Powell. In 1857 and 1858, Joseph Christmas Ives who was the first lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Topographical Engineers, was the first European American to reach the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. He began in a stern-wheel steamboat called the Explorer, but it crashed before he even entered the canyon itself, so he continued on for 30 miles in a skiff. In his report upon the Colorado River of the West, he said that, quote, "The region is, of course, altogether valueless. It can be approached only from the south, and after entering it, there is nothing to do but leave. Ours has been the first and will doubtless be the last party of whites to visit this profitless locality. It seems intended by nature that the Colorado River, along the greater portion of its lonely and majestic way, shall be forever unvisited and undisturbed," unquote. Just like how Americans between 1867 and 1897 so that Alaska would be completely worthless unless it was filled with gold. In the 1880s, railroads and infrastructure were built in the region and tourism began. The idea of turning the area into a national park was first introduced in 1882 by Benjamin Harrison, who was a senator at the time. He tried reintroducing the bill 2 more times in 1883 and 1886, but was not successful. When President Theodore Roosevelt visited the park in 1903, he called it, quote, "the one great sight which every American should see," unquote. In 1906, he created the Grand Canyon Game Preserve, and then the Grand Canyon National Monument in 1908. Finally, on February 26 of 1919, Grand Canyon National Park was established. In 1979, it was designated a World Heritage Site, and in 2010, it was featured on a quarter. I'm pretty sure I have that quarter. The Grand Canyon itself was a 1-mile deep canyon created by erosion from the Colorado River, which began after the uplift of the Colorado Plateau. 90% of visitors enter the park from the South Rim, which is the most accessible and can be driven to by Arizona State Route 64. On the South Rim, there's a shuttle bus along with hiking trails and lots of scenic overlooks. Even though there are fewer roads on the North Rim, there are a few overlooks that are accessible by vehicle, like Roosevelt Point, Cape Royale, and Point Imperial, as well as hiking trails and even mule rides that you can take down into the canyon. The park contains 5 climate zones: cold semi-arid, humid continental dry cool summer, humid continental dry warm summer Mediterranean, and hot summer Mediterranean. By the way, I do recommend looking at the Köppen climate classification, which is what I'm referring to when I talk about these climate zones. It's very interesting. Throughout the year, the park has an annual high of 63.4 degrees Fahrenheit or 17.4 degrees Celsius, an average low of 32.7 degrees Fahrenheit or 0.4 degrees Celsius, and an overall mean of 48.1 degrees Fahrenheit or 8.9 degrees Celsius, though temperatures as high as 101 Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, and as low as negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 29 degrees Celsius have been recorded. The park gets an average of 15.37 inches of rain and about 43 inches of snow each year. There are 12 plant species endemic to the park, along with 1,737 species of vascular plants, including ponderosa and pinyon pine, saltbrush, creosote bush, Utah agave, catclaw, acacia, stream orchid, western honey mesquite, blue spruce, yarrow, lupines, and a variety of cacti, along with 259 species of moss and lichen. Mammals in the park include the tassel-eared squirrel, rock squirrels, mule deer, bighorn sheep, and mountain lions. Reptiles and amphibians include the Utah tiger salamander, the Great Basin spadefoot toad, Gila monsters, rattlesnakes, and chuckwallas. Birds include peregrines and California condor. There are between 12 and 15 deaths each year in Grand Canyon National Park, but contrary to what you might expect, fall deaths only account for 2 or 3 of these deaths every year, and many of the people who do fall are messing around or posing for photos, which is just generally not a good idea when you're in a potentially dangerous location. This number is actually not that bad, considering that until 2020, Grand Canyon National Park was the second most visited national park after Great Smoky Mountains National Park, with about 6 million visitors a year. In 2020, it ranked number 6 with almost 3 million visitors, and in 2021, it was back up to third place with 4.5 million. This is the one national park that, despite its fame, I'm not sure I'll visit. I just don't really like crowds, but I hear that the canyon is impressive, so maybe someday I'll have to go. Great Basin National Park is a 77,180-acre national park in eastern Nevada. Adjacent to the national park is the Highland Ridge Wilderness, and in total, the wilderness area and the national park protect 145,792 acres of land. The Fremont people inhabited the region, and they built villages with pit houses and adobe storage structures, and farmed corn, squash, and beans. One of these villages is Baker Village, which is located close to the present-day national park and is believed to have been inhabited from 1220 to 1295 AD. They are believed to have traded with other villages based off of the obsidian, turquoise, and shell artifacts that have been found, and they also left pictographs that can still be seen in the park today. Then, between 1300 and 1500 AD, they just kind of dropped off the archaeological record. This was most likely because either the climate of the park became less ideal for farming and they were forced to adopt a more nomadic lifestyle, or because they were displaced by another group. In the late 1860s, a miner and rancher named Absalom Lehman settled in the region. In 1875, other families settled in the area as well to mine and farm, and around 1883, Lehman discovered what are now known as the Lehman Caves. In 1885, he led the first guided tour into the caves. On January 24th of 1922, President Harding created the Lehman Caves National Monument, and on October 27th, 1986, Great Basin National Park was established. The Great Basin, for which the park is named, is the dry mountainous region between the Sierra Nevada Range and the Wasatch Mountains. Wheeler Peak, the tallest mountain in the Snake Range and the second highest and most prominent in Nevada, is found within the park. It was named after George Wheeler, who led the Wheeler Survey between 1872 and 1879 and mapped the mountain, along with many other topographic features of the southwestern United States. The mountain also contains the Wheeler Peak Glacier. Though this has sometimes been called the southernmost glacier in the northern hemisphere, this isn't exactly true, although it is pretty far south for a glacier. Meltwater from this glacier has led to erosion on the mountain, creating many of the geographic features that can be seen today. It is a rock glacier, meaning that it not only contains a variety of rocks and minerals, but most of the glacier is buried in debris and is not visible. Even though it covers around 120,000 square feet, only a small percentage of it can be seen, and it's already a small glacier to begin with. The park also includes lakes, 2 visitor centers, and 12 trails. This park is classified as having a warm summer humid continental climate, with an average extreme minimum temperature of negative 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 19.9 degrees Celsius. Though most of the park undergoes significant weather fluctuations, the caves maintain about 90% humidity and a constant temperature of around 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. At the Lehman Caves Visitor Center, there's an average of 14.25 inches or 362 millimeters of precipitation and 66.7 inches of snow each year. Most of the precipitation in the park falls during the winter as snow or in thunderstorms in the summer. Nearly all of the water evaporates, seeps into the ground, or flows into nearby lakes. High temperatures in the park average at 59.3 degrees Fahrenheit, or 15.2 degrees Celsius, and low temperatures average at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, or 2.2 degrees Celsius, though temperatures as high as 100 degrees Fahrenheit and as low as negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 29 degrees Celsius, have been recorded. At higher elevations, temperatures are lower and precipitation is higher. The dominant species in the Lehman Caves is apparently bacteria, which kind of makes sense because if you think about it, bacteria are really the dominant species everywhere. The caves are also provide shelter to mammals like pack rats, chipmunks, and 10 species of bat. And some animals live full-time in the caves, including crickets, spiders, mites, pseudoscorpions, and springtails, or columbola, which are arthropods that are not technically considered insects. They could, however, be considered insanely creepy, and they are not really what I would like to see crawling on me in the middle of some dark cave. That's just another reason to remain spelunkophobic. The park as a whole has 2 amphibian species, 8 species of fish, 18 reptile species, 61 mammal species, and 238 bird species. The 2 amphibian species in the park are the western spadefoot toad and the leopard frog. There is only 1 native fish species, the Boonville cutthroat trout, and the other 7 were introduced. Birds include Canada geese, magpies, mallards, barn owls, killdeer, and tundra swans, and mammals include kit foxes, rabbits, bobcats, cougars, marmots, bighorn sheep, shrews, ringtail cats, and rock squirrels. Plants in the park include quaking aspen, Utah juniper, single-leaf pinon, sagebrush, ponderosa pine, and saltbush. But by far the most famous plants in the park are the bristlecone pine, which are the longest-lived known non-clonal organisms. They are conifers that grow mostly on limestone ridges just below the tree line at the park, and because they grow so slowly, they have very dense wood that gives them greater protection against parasites and erosion. Because few plants are able to grow where they are, there's also little risk of forest fires. There are some bristlecone pine that grow below the tree line, but because there are more forest fires there, they don't tend to live as long. The trees get their distinctive shape from high winds, and the reason why they often look half dead is because they have sectored architecture, which means that the roots are only connected to the part of the tree that are directly above them. So when a root dies off, that part of the tree dies as well. What was once believed to be the oldest non-clonal tree in the world, the Prometheus tree, estimated to be between 4,700 and 5,000 years old, was in the park until it was cut down in 1964. When it was cut down, it had 4,862 growth rings, which apparently can be seen at the visitor center in the park. In 2012, another tree was dated at 5,065 years old, and there may still be others that are older. Because caves terrify me, and the Wheeler Peak Glacier looks kind of dusty and not quite as impressive as the glaciers in the Alaska National Parks, or even on Mount Rainier and such, the main draw to this park for me would be the bristlecone pines. I think they're pretty interesting, and it's cool that they can live so long, and to me they always kind of look like wood sculptures. As always, I sincerely apologize for any mispronunciations, and also for all the information that I miss in these videos. There's so much more information out there, so if you're interested in any of these parks, I strongly encourage you to check them out. I leave the links to all the sources I use in the description, and the National Park website has a lot of good information and is a great place to start. The next video in the series will be of 3 of the national parks in Utah, and so hopefully I'll have that ready in a few weeks. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.